Hello everyone and welcome back to Vlogmas. I have no idea what day it is. You know what day it is. I don't, but you do. But I do know what I'm doing for today's video at least. I may not know the number, but at least I know what I'm actually doing. And that is making some shortbread and talking about historical romances.
That's not roasting.
So the shortbread recipe I'm using is actually in this historical romance Christmas anthology. It's How the Duke Stole Christmas. It has a short story from Tessa Dare, Sarah MacLean, Sophie Jordan and Joanna Shupe. And I've read the first three in this. I haven't read Joanna Shupe's because I ran out of time last year, so I will be reading that at some point this December. But at the end, Sarah MacLean has added her family's shortbread recipe. You can see that. So I'm going to be making these and I'm just going to talk about historical romances. I'm going to recommend you some. I'm going to talk about what ones are on my TBR. I'm going to be talking about all things historical romance. So I've preheated the oven and then combine flour, sugar and butter by hand. Flour, sugar and butter by hand. Yeah. And then I add the egg after, so I have to do that by hand too. Don't look forward to that. Right, let's do the flour. So it is 3 cups of flour. So I have been reading historical romances for 4 to 5 years now. I discovered them through Jessica from Peace Love Books. So she is the first, I feel like, booktube channel I found reading them. So yeah, that was where I feel like this is very noisy and I can't really talk while doing this. So yeah, and she recommended starting with Tessa Dare, which is where a lot of romance booktubers recommend starting. I also recommend starting with Tessa Dare. I find a lot of her books pretty easy to get into, like they're fun. I really only found one really good. So the first one I read was The Duchess Steele, and that is the first book in her ongoing series, and I actually decided to pick that one up because I really wanted to read The Wallflower Wager. So I read The Duchess Steele because that's the first book in the trilogy that The Wallflower Wager is in, and that's like a Beauty and the Beast kind of retelling. So it's about a man who has been to war and has gotten scars on his face due to injuries that he got. And after he comes back with his injuries, his fiance decides to not go ahead with the marriage because of the injuries to his face. I don't have enough sugar, which is concerning. I should put a little bit of brown sugar. I might do that. It won't be completely authentic, but it's fine. Just a little bit. Won't hurt. And the woman who made the dress for the wedding is super pissed because she still wants to get paid because, you know, she worked really hard to make this dress. What ends up happening is she gets into the dress, super mad, goes to the house and's like, you better pay me for this dress that I made. And he sees her in the dress and is like, why don't you marry me? They end up going ahead with that and they get married, and it's about their romance. And I didn't love it. It's not my favorite historical romance, but it was 4 stars. It was fun, and I think it was a good gateway into the genre, even if it wasn't like one of my favorites. I again still really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. Like, it didn't give me butterflies or anything, but like it was still fun, and it made me realize that this is a genre I could really enjoy because I loved the setting, and I love it because it's so different to where we live now, and it's so different to reading contemporary romances because there are so many ways to keep characters apart because they literally like can't be together most of the time. There's like this barrier keeping them apart, and I think I really enjoy that, and I enjoy reading about that time period, even though obviously it's not a great time in history. It's just fun, like reading about the balls and the dresses and, you know, courting and having your season and all of that. I think it's just like a fun romantic setting, and it's just enjoyable to read. That, I think it just adds like all of these different layers to it that I guess other books don't have. So it's always a genre that I've really just been drawn to. And since I read that one, I went on to read The Governess Game and then The Wallflower Wager. So I've read all that's out in that series now, and I have nearly read all of the Spindle Cove series. And then what did I read? I mainly just read Tessa Dare for ages. I think I then got into Beverly Jenkins, who I also really like now and have read a lot of books from. I think that it's really important to read, you know, POC authors in historical romance, because there's honestly not many, especially traditionally published. Like, I know there's a lot more diversity in the indie published historical romances. So I've read a lot of Beverly Jenkins books. I just love them. They are about strong, powerful women during these awful times in history, and how they just gain agency and love and a happy story. And there's always like lots of drama in them, and I always learn a lot from her books. They're also kind of like a history lesson as well. They're just top tier, really good books. So I kind of think a good place to start is Forbidden, which is in the Old West trilogy. That one is between a woman and a man who is white passing. There are some really awful parts of that story, but it's also a very powerful and uplifting story, and the romance is really nice. I also think Indigo is a really good one. That's a lot of people's favorite, so I don't know if I recommend starting there, just because like that could be your favorite. My favorite so far is either Josephine and the Soldier, which is a YA one, or Vivid. They're definitely the kind of standouts for me by Beverly Jenkins. Hi, sorry. My camera died. The battery went flat. So let's continue. I can't even remember what I was talking about. I think I was trying to figure out what the next historical romance author I started to binge watch, and it was Darcy Burke, and she's an indie historical romance author. Not looking forward to touching egg with my hand. And I basically binged a lot of her books because they were on Scribd, but you know how on Scribd, like, it's called unlimited, but it's not, and like it gets to a point where you can't listen to a bunch of things. Her books were just always available. Like, I could just listen to a bunch and it wouldn't seem to really affect my subscription, and I could just binge them and I would never, you know, run out. So I just listened to a bunch of her books. They're really fun. I can't think of what the series is called, but it's kind of like the Wallflower series by Lisa Kleypas, because it's about a bunch of wallflowers and they each have a romance. It does start as like a small friendship group, but then it ends up expanding, and we get a lot of other characters who aren't in the group, but they are, you know, wallflowers in some extent. Oh, it's called the Untouchable series because it's about a bunch of girls who are not kind of remarkable, they don't stand out, getting with the guys that do stand out for good or bad reasons, because they're kind of seen as untouchable. They're really fun. My favorite was, I think, The Duke of Deception. That one is my favorite, but they're all really fun. The second one's also pretty good. There's a lot in the series that are really fun. There's some that aren't as good, and then there are some that are really good. I think the second, third, and fourth are some that really stand out in my head as being lots of fun. The first one's actually like not the best one. One of my least favorites. It was just kind of meh, but I think it picks up from there. So if you're looking for some indie historical romances and you've got Scribd, Darcy Burke is a really good one. That's way too crumbly. I'm gonna have to add a little bit more butter. It did have butter measurements in cups, which I always hate because I think it's really hard to get butter measured accurately in a cup. And then I got into Bridgerton by Julia Quinn, obviously very popular books because of the show. That series was pretty hit or miss for me. I love the last one, and I think book 6, When He Was Wicked, is my favorite in the series. I think that's number 6. The rest were just okay. I absolutely hate the first one. I think it's terrible. But yeah, I think that those 3 are pretty good. And then I've since then just been reading more random ones. Lisa Kleypas is an author I really need to read more from. I've never read a Lorraine Heath, so that's an author I'd really love to read books from. So please let me know if there's a place you recommend starting with Lorraine Heath, because I don't even know where to start. Stephanie Lawrence is an author that I'm really excited to try out because Ellie from Elle Grey Books recommended her. She says she really likes her books, so I'm excited to give that a try. My favorite historical romance of all time is Any Duchess Will Do by Tessa Dare. I absolutely love that book. I think it is swoony. I think it is sexy. It gave me goosebumps. It gave me butterflies. It was just adorable and I loved it. It is a class difference romance and it's about a guy who's, I think he's an earl or a duke or something. He's of a position and he is the only son. So he needs to have a child so that the family has an heir. And he has no interest in marriage, he has no interest in having kids, he has no interest in settling down. And his mother is super annoyed about this. And she's like annoying the shit out of him. And she kind of gets to the point where she's just like done with his shit. So she ends up kidnapping her son and she takes him to Spindle Cove, which is where the series is set, which is a place for women that don't really fit in to go. And she's like, just pick a bloody woman, I'll turn her into a lady, you can marry her, it can be arranged, just pick one for God's sake. And so he decides to screw over his mom and he picks the chick that works at the tavern who is low class, and he's like, I pick her. And she, you know, wants money to support her sister. And so she goes with him because he tells her if she goes with him, he'll give her lots of money. So she goes on this crazy trip and he's like, I will give you the money if you, like, this is still too dry. If you play up for my mom and make her give up on this quest. Yeah, she goes along with the plan and their romance is adorable. And there's lots of just really lovely layers, like with the mom, and just like really nice heartfelt relationships. So it's definitely a good time. Now I think this might still be a bit dry. I'm just seeing like, I think I might just give them a little bit more butter. My second favorite historical romance is The Highwayman by Kerry and Byrne. So that's a lot more serious than Any Duchess Will Do. It's a very serious kind of intense historical romance. It's about these two people who were orphans and they were at the same orphanage and they kind of had a like childhood sweethearts romance. They actually had like a marriage that the other kids in the orphanage went through with, so they had like a wedding. Basically the boy ended up getting taken away and she thinks that he has died, and so she actually goes by his name and says she's a widow because she believes that it was a real marriage even though like legally it wasn't. And she ends up being kidnapped by this criminal who we all know who that's gonna be, and it's their romance. He's obviously been through a lot. He ends up going to prison and has a really awful experience there, and that's kind of how he's become what he is now. He's very different from when he was a kid. A very heartfelt, intense romance that covers many years in these people's lives. They really have this strong connection. It's very different from most historical romances. It's again a lot more dark and like dramatic and broody. Freaking love it. It's definitely again one of my favorites. I feel like since I'm making Sarah McLean's family's recipe, I should talk about Sarah McLean. I've never read a Sarah McLean book. I've only read the short story that was in this collection, and from memory I enjoyed it. I don't think it was my favorite, or it was. I don't remember. I can't get a lot of her books via audio. It still feels too dry. I think I want to start with, I think it's her historical romance debut or just her debut in general. Timrose Drake When Romancing a Rake. I feel like that's where I want to start, but I've never been able to find that secondhand, so I'll need to purchase it online. And I've just never done that, so I need to do that. So a sapphic historical romance I really enjoyed this year. It was, I can't remember the title, but I'll put the picture up here. This was super cute. I gave it 5 stars, and it's about these two girls who were friends when they were kids, and they kind of had feelings for each other, but obviously in that time period, not really safe. So one of them ends up marrying the other's cousin, and it jumps to the future when the cousin has passed away, which I feel really bad, but fuck yes. And the one who was married to the cousin is invited back to the family estate to stay with them while she's grieving, and she goes back and their romance is rekindled, and it's nice and short and really good. I loved it. It was so heartfelt. I just love like pining female historical romances. Like there's just something about them that is just on another level. Alyssa Cole's female historical romance was also really good. Another really good queer historical romance is A Lady for a Duke. And this is a romance and one of the characters is trans. And so it follows these two characters that were best friends as kids, and they ended up going to war together, and one of them dies and the other goes back and is really struggling with their PTSD and have become like quite a recluse. And it turns out that the friend that died didn't actually die, they just faked their death so that they could change their name and come back out into society as a woman. And so the sister of the man who has, you know, been really struggling finds out and requests that they come back to stay with the friend because they believe they're the only person that can help them get through what they're going through and help them, you know, open up more and be less of a recluse and learn to enjoy life again. So the heroine goes to the best friend's estate in the hopes of helping them, and they end up having a romance, and it's adorable. It's like the actual romance itself is like 5 billion stars, but unfortunately I didn't love the book because it kind of felt like a period drama. It focused a lot on side characters and their plot lines as well, which kind of annoyed me. I just wanted like a romance. So obviously that won't bother a lot of people. That's just me because, you know, I went into it wanting a romance, and their romance was so good that I was kind of annoyed that it was focusing on all this other stuff. But that's another really good queer one. It came out this year. Some historical romances I really want to get to. I really want to get to the Destiny series by Beverly Jenkins. So here are the cookies. Some of them are a bit thicker than others, but we'll just see how it goes. Rebel Carter is another author that I'd really like to try, especially her sapphic historical romance. The covers of her books are stunning. I'd also love to get to a Sherry Thomas historical romance next year. Anna Campbell. I really liked a Christmas historical romance novella I read by her. I really need to read some more Kerrigan Byrne. I've never read a Joanna Lindsay, actually. There's quite a few like old school historical romance authors whose books I'd like to try because I don't think they're like super terrible. Like they actually seem like they're okay. So yeah, Joanna Lindsay's one of them. I know Nora Roberts has some older books that I think are okay. I think I really should read some Cat Sebastian next year. I think I've read one. I think I've read one of their sapphic books, Nerdzella. But yeah, Cat Sebastian's definitely an author I want to read more of because she is an Avon published historical romance author who writes queer romances, which, as I said, we don't really get a lot of. She mostly writes male, but I have realized this year that I love male romances. So, because I mainly just read sapphic because I do still love that the most. But I think like, I just like anything, you know? Like, I mean, I learned that I like Blue Alien Smart this year, so who knows at this point. But I think something I'd like to, I have so many ideas, but I always think like, no one's gonna watch it. I really hate when I get like that because I think that that's the kind of mentality that will burn me out. I think that that's beneficial for me, but you know, it still crosses my mind. But anyway, an idea that I've had that I've been tossing and turning is like just going to a secondhand bookshop and finding a really old school historical romance, like a random one I've never heard of, and just read it and see if it's super terrible Again, I'm worried no one will watch that. I want to see that, so let me know if you would like to see that. I think it could be fun but also scarring because consent really wasn't a thing. You know, I'm always scared. I think like the oldest historical romance I've read is Annie's Song, which was not good. Not at all. So you know, I'm always a little bit reluctant to try old school historical romances, but I would love to just, yeah, like I go to so many secondhand bookshops and they have like really old ones that look terrible, and like I often look up reviews, but the reviews are really bad. And so I think I just need to read one and go in, and if it's god awful, it'll be a fun video, you know? But yeah, I would love to do more historical romance content next year because I didn't read a lot this year. Like compared to the year before, I barely read any historical romance, and I'm really sad about it because, again, it's a genre that I really, really love. Obviously, again, it has its flaws, but, you know, it's still something that I really enjoy reading. So I would really love for me to be able to kind of incorporate that more into my channel next year if I can. But again, I'm always worried that it's too niche and people don't care. I'd love to find one that I've never heard of that I just buy and read because of the step back. Like there's a lot of things I could do. I just don't know if people want to see it. And a series that I want to try doing is where I read the historical romances that I own. Because I own quite a few that I have purchased because I cannot get the audiobooks to them. Because I mainly consume historical romances through audio, well, really romance in general. So I've brought a bunch that I can't get on audio, but I never end up reading them. So I'm wondering if like people would enjoy it every month or every second month. I just do a video where I pick a random one that I own and read it. So I think that could be fun. I think I can put these in now. I think that's gonna do it. So I'm gonna see if I can fit all of these in. Alright, well, I'll come back to you guys when they have cooked. Hopefully I don't burn them, but, you know, knowing me, they probably will be burnt. Okay, so as you saw, they are done, and I'm gonna give this one a try. Let's give this a go. It's still quite hot, but I want to get this video filmed. I wasn't sure at first, but it's nice. I think, yeah, maybe I went too much with the butter, but it just seemed to be really crumbly, so I don't know. And also, maybe it did need a little bit more sugar. I think the brown sugar wouldn't have been overpowering, so I probably could have put a little bit more. But again, if I was organized, I would have just had enough sugar. But I'm not. I do like that recipe. I don't know if it'll be the shortbread recipe I always make, but these are much more successful than the ones I made last year. If you're an OG person who's been watching my channel since the start, in one of my first videos, I made shortbread. I think it actually is my very first video. Anyway, it's near the start of my channel that I made shortbread, and they were really bad. They were not nice. These are much nicer. It's a good recipe. I do highly recommend giving it a try if you've got this book and you've been thinking about making them. I think they're nice. It's just that the butter is measured in cups, which I, again, hate. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, that is gonna do it for Vlogmas today. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. Definitely chat with me in the comments about all of the things I talked about historical romance. I'd absolutely love to know your opinions. Just recommend me and some historical romances. If you are looking for any suggestions, let me know. Let's just chat. But yeah, that's gonna do it for Vlogmas today, and hopefully I'll see you for Vlogmas tomorrow. But until then, Bye. I'm gonna be living off these. I'm gonna be living off these. They are so nice.
Oh, it's been said many times, many ways. Merry Christmas.